When you read your book, which is a terrific book, I've read it, the first thing you tell, as I recall, is the anecdote when you went back, I think after your junior year at Harvard, to work with your mother with a supplemental education program, and you worked with a teenager who had everything going for him, and you were going to get him into a good college, and it didn't work. Explain to us. It's a really sad story, actually.
Yeah, it was one of those moments that actually changed my life. He was a remarkable young man. My mother ran an inner-city tutoring program on the south side of Chicago for 50 years, raised my sister and brother and I all as a part of her program. He got really good grades. He was actually on the B honor roll at his high school, never got caught in the gangs, drugs, the violence of the neighborhood, had played by all the rules. And very quickly after we started working together, I realized he was fundamentally illiterate. He could barely read and write. And had no real chance of having that dream of going to a big-time, college. And so a young man who had gone to school, gotten good grades, was on the B honor roll, had just been passed from grade to grade his entire life. And the heartbreaking part is he had no idea how far behind he was. He thought he was on track to be successful.
But the whole system had told him he was doing fine. The whole system told him he was doing fine.
More than fine.
Yeah, so let's talk about that problem of getting him too late. I'm going to put up a chart here, actually, that shows U.S. compared to other countries in the number of 3- and 4-year-olds enrolled. And United Kingdom actually is 103%. That's because they enroll people who aren't even citizens of the country. And the United States is way down the list at 54%. What's the issue in the United States with preschool education? Why don't we have more of it?
Dave, that's a fantastic question. The short answer is we don't understand how important this is, and I would argue we don't value our children enough. James Heckman, a Nobel Prize-winning professor at the University of Chicago, has studied this for decades longitudinally. He finds that for every dollar we invest in pre-K, we as a society get back $7, a 7-to-1 ROI. Less teenage pregnancy, less dropouts, more high school graduates, more young people going to college, more people entering the workforce and becoming productive citizens. This is a life-changing opportunity. Whenever I speak across the country, David, I always say if I had one additional tax dollar, one more dollar to spend, I would put it into high-quality early childhood education. When we were part of the Obama administration, we were very, very lucky to be able to put more than $1 billion behind this to increase by more than 100,000 the number of young people with access. But we have so many kids around the country, 3- and 4-year-olds, who we deny the opportunity. That does not make sense. That doesn't happen in other countries.
How much would we need to spend per state? Because we have ranking of expenditures as a percentage of state GDP, and Vermont spends the most at over 5%, North Dakota one of the least at just over 2%. How much do we need to spend to actually make a difference?
Well, the short answer is it would vary state by state, but if you looked at the number of 3- and 4-year-olds who don't have access, and you multiply that by whatever it might be, 8,000, 10,000, that's your answer right there. But I just want to be very clear, this is not an expense, this is an investment. It's the best investment we can make in young people, in their families, and ultimately in our nation.
And yet, at the same time, the United States, if you rank us according to the world, we rank like number 24 in reading, number 24 in science, number 40 in mathematics. We have an election coming up now in 60 days, Arnie. I don't remember hearing too much talk about education. Why is it not on the political agenda in this country?
These are fantastic questions. Again, because we as voters, David, we don't vote on this issue. And education should be the ultimate bipartisan or nonpartisan issue. I could care less, left, right, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. No one has a monopoly on good ideas. But you never hear politicians talk about education, and that breaks my heart because we as educationists don't hold them accountable. So whether it's local election mayors or governors or congressmen or senators or the president, if we were demanding that more children had access to high-quality pre-K, if we were demanding concrete plans to raise graduation rates and reduce dropout rates, if we were demanding politicians make college more accessible and affordable, everything would change. Everything would change. So I can't emphasize enough how important it is, regardless of your political thinking or ideology, to vote on who is creating educational opportunity for young people in your community, in your state, and across the country.
And I know, Arnie, that whether it was in Chicago or in the schools there or in Washington, you actually tried to be as bipartisan as possible with this, but it seems to have become a partisan issue. You wrote an op-ed piece for The Guardian just yesterday. I'm going to read just part of that. You said the Trump administration has no position on increasing access to pre-K or continuing the work of raising high school graduation rates or of once again leading the world in college graduation rates. The more I listen to the president, the more I'm convinced that the administration's lack of educational goals is by design. Why is that?
And again, I absolutely do think education is a bipartisan issue. I think Trump, unfortunately, is an authoritarian leader. And when you have an authoritarian leader who says the press is the enemy of the people, who says I am the only source of truth, when that's your mentality, when that's your philosophy, you don't want a well-educated citizenry. You don't want people who can think critically, who can think independently, who can challenge sources of information to sort out the truth. And you never, from this administration, ever hear them talking about increasing access to pre-K. We were proud to get high school graduation rates to 84%, historic highs, but it's not high enough, David. The current administration, the goal should be to get that to 90%. You never hear that conversation. You never hear the conversation about making college more accessible and more affordable. As a nation, David, early childhood education, K-12, higher education, I talk about this in the book, we are top 10 in nothing. Top 10 in nothing. We have to get better, faster, and the lack of conversation, the lack of goals, the lack of any sense of urgency from the current administration, honestly, is heartbreaking.